So, the season is quickly approaching, but there are a couple of other teams that I want to talk about before things get going. Namely, and obviously in this one, being the Clippers. Hello everybody, welcome to Awesome Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already and drop a like on this video. It only takes 1 second and makes a massive difference in how this video performs in the YouTube algorithm. The title of this video is going to be something along the lines of the Clippers are a hypothetical team, and that perfectly describes the way that I feel about them. It's just so hard to actually evaluate, to actually place their standing in the league. I recently did the podcast with Rudy and Alex where we did our power rankings, and I believe I had the Clippers in the top 10, but like towards the bottom of it when, you know, if this team was a team that was regularly showing up at full strength, they would quite easily be a top 5 team in the league. In fact, they might be number 4 after the obvious top 3 contenders of the Bucks, Celtics, and Nuggets. So that's worthy of consideration with them, where every single year we're going, when these guys are healthy, look out. And if you take a look at the record that Kawhi and Paul George have, at least in the regular season when they are healthy, it's quite substantially impressive. Now, they have, of course, had times in the playoffs where they disappointed, most obviously when they lost a 3-1 lead to the Denver Nuggets. But other than that, they haven't really been able to be fully healthy for a full playoff series since then. It really seems as though they kind of blew their opportunity to actually win a title with that core the moment that like Paul George hit the corner of the backboard in Game 7. But now I actually think the roster that the Clippers have is about as good as it's ever been. Early on, they had like the Lou Williams, Montrezl Harrell bench, and I didn't really fuck with that team that much. I felt like there was an overabundance of offensive players there, even though they were still a good defense. I just didn't really like the flow of that team's offense, and both Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell proved to be significantly less valuable in a postseason setting than they were in the regular season. I like the team more that's more defensive and forward oriented. They have Robert Covington and Nicholas Batum on top of obviously having Paul George and Kawhi. Marcus Morris is kind of an annoying player, but at the end of the day, he is a big and good defending forward. So they have that going for them, which is great. And then I like with the dynamic that Norman Powell brings to the team. I think Zubats is a pretty underrated player. I really like his role on the team. I just really like the Clippers roster a lot. And then of course, Russell Westbrook looked the best that he has looked at least since being in a Wizards jersey. And like, yeah, I guess technically the Lakers are the only other team he was with post Wizards jersey, but still. And then when he played in the playoffs, he had probably his best playoff performance in God knows how long. Truly very impressive stuff from Russ, and he actually made the Clippers like somewhat remain afloat against the Phoenix Suns in spite of Kawhi Leonard only playing like a game and a quarter, I think it was. So yeah, really like this roster, but they're a hypothetical. The other thing that's a big hypothetical is James Harden going to be here? Because that seems to be the only team that's really rumored to be interested in James Harden. It really seems to be the only team that is actually going to pursue him. The Philadelphia 76ers are in this weird position that I have mentioned a few times, which is from a salary cap perspective, they can just let James Harden go and have a shitload of salary cap, but you're also just letting a very good basketball player leave your team for nothing. And regardless of how you feel about James Harden the past few years, he is still a very good basketball player. He's still a walking 20 and 10 on decent efficiency and decent defense, and that's definitely much better than most NBA players. You know, health is a concern. How good he's going to be in the postseason is obviously a concern, even more so than when he was in his prime for sure. At the end of the day, James Harden's quite a good basketball player, and I do think what he would bring to the table for the Clippers would be interesting. However, I don't know if it's enough of a boost that, you know, it would make up for the fact that like maybe Paul or maybe Kawhi don't play in one series or another. Could see in like the first round, like having James being enough to get them over the hump when they otherwise would flame out just from having one of those guys out. But unless you're actually getting everybody healthy, it ultimately probably isn't going to matter all that significantly. And actually getting everybody healthy seems to be just a fallacy at this point. Not to mention, Russell Westbrook's making like $3 million. So, you know, if you had to cut him out, that would not like hurt your team in any capacity, but it would be, I don't know. I feel like you got kind of a diamond in the rough there. As weird as that is to say about Russell Westbrook of all people, getting him for that money, getting him after he played as well as he did in the Clippers environment, finally having that true spacing again, I feel like I would rather just rock with what you have than give up like draft capital, give up real assets just to get a guy who obviously is better than Russ, but kind of fills Westbrook's role as the playmaker. They've obviously been looking for a lead facilitator for pretty much ever since this team's inception. They've done playmaking by committee, which has worked, but there's definitely been moments where it was like, damn, if Kawhi or Paul George aren't just hitting a ridiculous shot, then this offense isn't going. So yeah, James Harden would kind of undercut Russ, which maybe is something you're comfortable doing, but at the end of the day, I do feel like Russ, Terrence Mann, and Norman Powell could ultimately be more impactful and more helpful for you than just James Harden, especially given that, like, look, I feel like James Harden's reasoning for being upset with the Sixers is valid. His approach to dealing with that, maybe not as much, but being upset with the fact that he was promised max money and then denied max money, I understand why he would take issue with that, but he has been a disruptor and a problem for every team that he has gone to since leaving Houston, and he was even briefly a problem in Houston. So I do think there's reason to be concerned for the prospect of trading for him, especially if you're trading essentially 3, maybe even 4 true rotation players. Now, a report recently came out that I immediately made fun of, that the Clippers were not willing to part ways with Terrence Mann. I do think that's kind of silly. It reminds me of, when the Sixers wouldn't trade Matisse Thybulle for James Harden, or when the Lakers wouldn't trade Taylor Horton-Tucker for Kyle Lowry. Just silly shit. You gotta understand, appreciate the place these guys hold in the league, and I don't think Terrence Mann is enough to get hung up on whether or not you are trading for a walking 20 and 10, as I previously mentioned. That said, you could definitely see the argument of like 3 rotation players versus 1, especially that one being one that is wholly unreliable. James Harden alone can outperform the value of those 3 players combined. However, he cannot be 3 bodies. He cannot be 3 players, and that is an important thing to take note of. I understand why the Clippers are apprehensive to moving like Terrence Mann, for example. Honestly, though, I feel like I'd rather move Terrence Mann than like Nicholas Batum, just because, Terrence Mann is, they're probably equally quality players, but Nicholas is just a little bit bigger, a little bit better defensively, a little bit more versatile. I don't know how much of a difference they have as 3-point shooters, but just my gut instinct says I trust Nicholas Batum from outside a little bit more. But Terrence Mann has a longer future in the league, so I get it. But yeah, that's my whole point of this video is just help. I truly do not know how to evaluate the Clippers, and I've been doing this for years now, pretty much echoing similar points, but enough years in a row of the injuries just not being a thing that goes away has made it to where I just have to throw my hands up. Like, I don't know, man. Very good on paper, very good when healthy. Will they be healthy? No. So it is what it is. Shout out to Rudy for editing this video, and goodbye.